All right, let's get right into it. We're about to break down what a war with Iran could actually look like. And this isn't guesswork. This is based on 2 straight decades of war simulations run by one of the world's top experts. And what he found is that this kind of conflict is way more predictable and a lot more dangerous than most people think.
And that quote right there from the expert himself really says it all. This isn't just a random series of unfortunate events. Professor Apaji warns that this is a predictable, step-by-step slide into a crisis, a trap where the person who throws the first punch ends up losing control of the whole situation. So, who is Professor Robert Pape? Well, he's not just some academic. This is a guy who has advised every single White House from 2001 all the way to 2024. He literally built the training curriculum that prepares the U.S. Air Force for this exact type of war. So, yeah, when he speaks, people in very high places tend to listen.
So what exactly is this trap he's talking about? According to Pape's entire analysis, the crisis we're looking at isn't some accident. It's a very specific, predictable dynamic that he calls the escalation trap.
Here's the core idea, and it's absolutely crucial. The trap springs when your first military strike is a smashing success, tactically speaking. The bombs hit their targets, everything blows up just like you planned. But that military win completely fails to achieve your political goal. In fact, it creates a new, even worse problem. And that forces you to escalate, to take even bigger military action, which then creates even bigger political problems. And you see where this is going. It's a vicious cycle that ends in a massive strategic failure you never, ever intended.
So how on earth does a superpower get caught in a trap like this? Well, Pape argues it all starts with a huge, fundamental misunderstanding of who you're actually fighting, a total misread of the Iranian regime.
And I love this analogy Papa uses because it makes it so clear. You see, on the left, you have the myth that the Iranian regime is like a Jenga tower. It looks tall, but it's brittle. You just have to find the right block to pull, say, the supreme leader, and the whole thing comes crashing down. But the reality, he says, is that it's more like an adaptive matrix. It's resilient. You take out a piece and the system doesn't collapse. No, it adapts. It just fills that empty space, and often it fills it with someone tougher, more aggressive, and even more dangerous.
And this isn't just a theory. In the simulation, this exact thing plays out. The U.S. successfully takes out the supreme leader. But here's the incredible irony. This was a leader who had actually issued religious decrees, fatwas, against building a nuclear bomb. He was, in a strange way, a brake on the program. And who replaced him? His son, a known hardliner with zero religious issues with going nuclear. The system didn't just survive, it got worse. So it's that fundamental misunderstanding that triggers the whole thing. It kicks off a predictable 3-stage journey that takes you deeper and deeper into the trap. So let's walk through Pape's simulation, step by agonizing step. Here's the roadmap. It's pretty straightforward. Stage 1 is that initial strike. Stage 2 is when you realize Stage 1 failed, so you try to topple the regime. And Stage 3, well, that's the one everyone dreads, ground war. The scary part is, each stage is an almost unavoidable consequence of the failure of the one right before it. Okay, so Stage 1. It all starts with what looks and feels like a massive victory. The bombs fall, the targets are obliterated, and for a moment, it really seems like mission accomplished. And that's exactly what unfolds in the wargame. U.S. stealth bombers achieve over 90% precision. Incredible, right? But here's the problem. The whole point of the mission wasn't to blow up buildings. It was to get the enriched uranium. And satellite photos showed tricks moving all that material before the bombs even fell. So the U.S. won the battle, but completely lost the war for the material. And in retaliation, Iran fires a massive missile barrage at Israel. And this number, this is what haunts the rest of the simulation, 16. According to Pape's analysis, that's how many nuclear bombs worth of material Iran has. And because Stage 1 failed, the U.S. now has absolutely no idea where it is. That uncertainty, that unknown, becomes the driving force for everything that happens next. It's just intolerable. Which brings us right to Stage 2. See the logic? You can't find the nuclear material, which means you can't bomb it. So what's the next logical step in the trap? You have to go after the people in charge. You have to try for regime change. So the U.S. ups the ante, targeting the new leadership. But Iran doesn't fight back head-on. No, they do something much smarter. They escalate horizontally. They use their swarms of precision drones to hit the soft economic underbelly of America's allies in the region. Think about it, crippling tourism in Dubai, hitting oil facilities in Saudi Arabia. The goal is just brilliant in its simplicity. Make it so painful for these countries to host U.S. forces that the whole anti-Iran coalition just crumbles from the pressure.
And that leads us to the final, and by far the most dangerous stage. Your regime change strategy didn't work. Your coalition of allies has fallen apart, and that nuclear material, it's still out there, somewhere. The political pressure at home to just do something becomes absolutely immense.
And this is where the calls for boots on the ground begin. A limited invasion to send in special forces to hunt for this stuff, which is probably buried deep underground. This is how you get into a long-term quagmire. And Iran's response? It escalates again. But this time, it goes global. The risk of terrorism on U.S. soil skyrockets. And they threaten the Strait of Hormuz, that tiny waterway that a huge chunk of the world's oil has to pass through. Suddenly, this isn't a regional war anymore. It's a global economic crisis that could spike gas prices for everyone everywhere.
So, given this clear, logical, and terrifying progression, what does Professor Pape, the man who's been running these simulations for 20 years, think is the most likely outcome?
And the odds he puts on it are, well, they're just stark. He gives it a 75% probability of escalating all the way to stage 3, a ground war, and only a 25% chance of some kind of diplomatic deal being reached. Think about that, a 3 in 4 chance of boots on the ground, based on the relentless logic of this trap.
So why is he so certain? Why those incredibly high odds? It all comes back to that one single driving fact. A superpower like the United States simply cannot and will not politically tolerate a situation where an adversary has the raw ingredients for 16 nuclear bombs, and you are completely blind. You don't know where they are or what they're planning to do with them. That uncertainty is the engine driving the whole escalation. And this leads to the final agonizing problem for any president sitting in the Oval Office. There is no easy way out of this. There's no magical golden off-ramp where you can declare victory and everyone goes home happy. This situation creates what's known as a Hobsonian choice. You might have heard the old line from Henry Ford. You can have any color you want as long as it's black. That's a Hobsonian choice. It's the illusion of a choice when really there's only one terrible option on the table. It's a choice between a loss and, well, another loss. And these are the two choices left. Choice A, cut your losses right now. Stop the bombing, pull back your forces, and just accept a clear but hopefully limited political defeat. Or choice B, double down. Keep pushing forward into stage 3, hope against hope for some kind of miracle, but risk a truly catastrophic, legacy-destroying political failure down the line. And Pape adds one final complex layer to this, the personality of the person making that decision. He analyzes President Trump, who he calls a chaos kid, someone who often thrives by shaking things up and being unpredictable. But in a finely balanced military trap like this one, Pape warns that very same instinct to create chaos could be the thing that leads directly to that catastrophic failure. So we'll leave you with that final question, because it's one thing for us to analyze it from the outside. But if you were the one in that chair, in the situation room, and these were your only two options, what would you do? Would you take the guaranteed small defeat today, or would you roll the dice and risk a devastating, historic catastrophe tomorrow?